I needed $4,100 for a hip replacement, or I'd be in a wheelchair by Christmas. We just put a down payment on a boat, my daughter said. Money's tight right now. Then her husband got on the line. Dad, maybe look into a payment plan. The call ended before I could say another word. 3 days later, that same daughter would be standing on my porch in the rain, asking me to forgive something she never thought I'd have the strength to do. But that afternoon, I didn't know anything about revocable trusts, successor trustees, or what 34 years of quiet saving had built without anyone noticing. I only knew that my right hip had finally given out, and the number on the surgical estimate wouldn't stop swimming in front of me no matter how many times I blinked. My name is Harold Whitfield. I was 71 years old, and I lived alone in a two-story colonial outside Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, in the same house where my wife Doris and I had raised our two kids. For 36 years, I ran a small HVAC repair business out of a garage bay behind the house. I'd spent my whole working life on my knees in crawl spaces and on ladders in July heat, and I'd always figured my body would hold up longer than it did. The joint had been grinding for 2 years. I told myself it was just age. Then one morning, I couldn't get up off the bathroom floor for 11 minutes, and I sat there timing it on my watch because I didn't trust myself to stand. The orthopedic surgeon's office smelled like hand sanitizer and old carpet. After the x-rays, the doctor set the images up on the screen and turned it toward me like he was showing me a losing hand of cards. Bone on bone, Mr. Whitfield, he said. There's really nothing left to protect. I asked him how long I could put it off. He told me the joint would keep deteriorating and that a fall at my age could turn a hip problem into something much worse. After insurance, the surgical center wanted $4,100 up front to schedule the date, some kind of facility fee my supplemental plan didn't touch. I had the money, technically. A paid-off house, a retirement account, a modest stock portfolio Doris and I had built over 3 decades of not buying new cars. But none of that helps when a scheduling desk wants a check before they'll put a date on the calendar, and my checking account had taken a beating that year. Doris's hospice care the winter before had eaten through more than I expected, even with Medicare. Then the water heater died. Then I needed a crown replaced that I'd been putting off for a year. And 2 years before that, my daughter Kimberly had called me crying because her husband Todd's landscaping business had come up short on payroll 2 weeks running. I'd wired them $19,000 the next day. I hadn't made them sign a note. I hadn't told my son or brought it up at anyone's birthday dinner. She was my daughter and she'd sounded scared, and I remembered what it felt like to be young and underwater. So I sat at my kitchen table with the surgical estimate under my palm, and I called her. Kimberly picked up on the 3rd ring. Hey, Dad, can I call you back? We're in the middle of something. I could hear voices behind her, someone laughing, glasses clinking. What's going on over there? I asked. We just closed on the boat, she said, and I could hear the pride in it even through the phone. She and Todd had been talking about a used pontoon boat for the lake house they rented every August, something to keep down there permanently. That's wonderful, I said. Congratulations. I almost let her go right then. Then the numbers on the estimate blurred again, and I made myself keep talking. Kimberly, I need to ask you something. Her voice changed just slightly. What's going on, Dad? I told her about the hip, the bone on bone, the $4,100 the surgical center needed before they'd schedule anything. I'm not asking you to give it to me, I said. I can move some retirement money, but it takes weeks to clear without a penalty. I just need a short loan. 2, 3 weeks at the most. The music in the background didn't get quieter. Dad, she said, this is really bad timing. The boat cost more than we budgeted. There's a slip fee, insurance. We just don't have it liquid right now. I looked around my kitchen. The refrigerator hummed the way it always did. I wouldn't ask if it could wait, I told her. You always make everything sound like an emergency. For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. The doctor said a fall could put me in a wheelchair, I said. Someone spoke close to the phone. Todd's voice muffled. What's he want now? Kimberly's voice moved away and came back. Dad, hold on. Then Todd was on the line, his voice smooth in the way it always was when he wanted to sound reasonable. Harold, listen, I hear you, but you've got a house, you've got savings, you've got a retirement account. Have you looked into a payment plan with the surgical center? A lot of places do financing now. I did have a plan, I said. I planned for 40 years, so I wouldn't have to ask my children for anything. This is just bad timing on cash flow. I waited for Kimberly to take the phone back and tell him that wasn't his business to run interference on. Instead, I heard her in the background, quiet, almost pleading. Just handle it, Todd. I don't want to talk about this right now. Then the line went dead. I sat there with the phone still against my ear for a long moment. I wasn't angry, not at first. Embarrassment came first, hot and low in my stomach. 71 years old, and I'd been made to feel like a burden for asking my own daughter to help me stay on my feet. My hand rested flat on the table, and I noticed the old callus across my palm from decades of gripping a wrench. When Kimberly was 15, she'd wanted a car for her 16th birthday, something her friends all had. Doris said we couldn't swing it. I picked up 3 extra service calls a week for 4 months and bought her a used Civic outright. I'd been proud that my daughter never had to feel like she was going without. Now she owned a boat and couldn't spare $4,000 for 2 weeks. Around 7 that evening, my doorbell rang. I hadn't turned on the porch light yet. Nathan stood outside in a gray hoodie with his backpack slung over one shoulder, holding a grocery bag against his hip. "You look like hell, Pop," he said. "Nice to see you too," I told him. He walked past me into the kitchen, set the bag on the counter, and stopped when he saw the surgical estimate still sitting there. Nathan had been my foster son for going on 15 years, though by law and by every other measure he'd been my son for the last 11 of them. He had a way of noticing exactly what a person was trying hardest to hide. "Pop," he said quietly, "what's this?" I told him it was nothing. He crossed his arms and waited the way he always did, patient as a stone, until I told him everything. He didn't call Kimberly names. He didn't roll his eyes or shake his head. He picked up the estimate and read it twice under the kitchen light. "What's the number for the surgical center's billing office?" he asked. That wasn't a yes or no question. "You've got rent," I told him. "You've got your own bills, your own life, and you've got one hip that still works fine." Before I could argue further, he pulled a folded check from his jacket pocket and set it on the table. "Open it after I leave," he said. "Nathan," I started. "After I leave, Pop, otherwise you'll spend 20 minutes trying to hand it back to me." He hugged me, grabbed his keys, and was out the door before I could get another word out. Inside the fold was a cashier's check for exactly $4,100 and a note in his blocky handwriting. "Pop, you never once made me feel like a project. You just kept showing up at every game and every court date until I believed I was allowed to stay. Let me show up for you now." I pressed the paper flat against the table because my hands had started to shake and I didn't trust myself to hold it steady. That check would fix my hip, but what happened before it arrived had already changed the way I understood my own family. I called him the next morning before 7. He picked up on the second ring. "Please tell me you didn't try to walk down to get the paper," he said. "Good morning to you too," I told him. "Nathan, I'm calling about the check." There was a pause, the sound of a cabinet closing somewhere on his end. "I already figured you'd try to talk me out of it," he said. "I can't take $4,100 from you." "You already did," he said. "I haven't deposited it yet." "Then deposit it." I stood at the counter with one hand wrapped around my coffee mug. "Nathan, you're saving for a truck. So are a lot of people," he said. "You need that money more than I need a truck right now." "I have savings, Pop. I'm fine." I rubbed my forehead. "You don't owe me for raising you." His voice softened just slightly. "Then Kimberly didn't owe you for that Civic either. But that's not the point." "What is the point then?" "It's what family does when somebody's scared." I didn't answer right away. Nathan had a habit of putting his finger directly on the thing I was trying hardest not to name. I'd been scared in that orthopedic office, scared on the bathroom floor timing myself on my watch. I've scared every night going up the stairs, wondering if this would be the night my knee buckled, and I'd go down and nobody would find me until Tuesday. Fear wasn't something men of my generation talked about easily. We called it being cautious. We called it planning ahead. We called it anything except what it actually was. Finally, I told him I'd pay him back. "You can try," he said. "That sounds like a threat," I said. "It is." I laughed for the first time since the appointment. That was Nathan all over. He rarely made speeches. He just planted himself somewhere and waited for the rest of us to catch up to him. He hadn't always been that steady. The first time the caseworker brought him to us, he was 13, wearing a coat 2 sizes too big and carrying everything he owned in a black trash bag because nobody had given him a real suitcase. He'd been in and out of placement since he was 9. He stood in our entryway looking past us toward the door like he was already calculating how fast he could get back to it if he needed to. Doris showed him the spare room upstairs. fresh sheets, a secondhand dresser, curtains she'd hemmed herself on the sewing machine in the basement. He set the trash bag by the bed but never unpacked it. At dinner that first night, he barely spoke, ate fast, and slid 2 rolls into his coat pocket when he thought we weren't looking. I saw him do it. I didn't say a word. Later, I left a container of leftover chicken in the fridge with a sticky note that just said, "For whoever gets hungry at night." By morning, it was gone. Nathan expected the rules to change without warning, the way they had at every other house. Every question sounded like an accusation to him. Where are you going meant we didn't trust him. What time will you be home meant we were looking for an excuse to send him back. Once he came in 2 hours past curfew and found me sitting on the porch steps still in my work coveralls. He stopped at the bottom of the stairs. "I know," he said. "I'll go pack up." "You'll go inside," I told him. He stared at me. "You're not sending me back?" "I'm angry, Nathan. Not finished with you." "What's the difference?" I stood up slowly, my knees already starting to complain even back then. "The difference is you still have to look me in the eye tomorrow morning," I said. He didn't look like he believed me, but he came inside anyway. Another time, learning to drive in my old pickup, he clipped the mailbox post backing out of the driveway and put a good dent in the rear panel. He climbed out shaking, pale. "I'll pay for it," he said, already reaching for his wallet like there'd be enough in it. "You don't have any money," I told him. "Then I guess I'll go," he said. Doris looked at me like she was about to cry. Instead, I handed Nathan a flashlight. "Hold this steady while I look at the damage," I said. He blinked at me. "You're not sending me back over this? You hit a mailbox post, Nathan. You didn't rob a gas station." It took him a long while to understand that mistakes came with consequences but didn't automatically end a person's place in a house. He got suspended once for shoving a kid who'd made a crack about foster kids stealing things. Doris sat through the meeting with the vice principal. On the ride home, Nathan stared out the window and said, "You can drop the act now." Doris kept her eyes on the road. "What act?" "That you actually want me here." She pulled the car into the pharmacy lot, put it in park, and turned to face him. "We are dealing with what you did," she said. "We are not getting rid of who you are." He didn't say anything the rest of the drive, but that night I noticed his trash bag was gone from beside the bed. He'd put his things in the dresser drawers instead. It wasn't much, but Doris and I both understood exactly what it meant. My son Gregory was away at college by then, and never quite knew what to make of Nathan. He wasn't cruel about it, not out loud, but there were comments. "Guess I'm not the only one anymore," or "You two sure spend a lot of time on him." Doris used to tell Gregory that love wasn't a pizza. Giving somebody else a slice didn't mean his got smaller. I mostly kept quiet about it, figuring Gregory would grow out of the jealousy on his own. That was one of my mistakes. I told myself time would smooth it over, because that's what fathers tell themselves when they don't want to deal with something head-on. Nathan finished high school with decent grades and perfect attendance senior year. When he decided he wanted to become an electrician, he told me it was because he wanted to build things that lasted, instead of being the kind of thing people threw away. He got into a union apprenticeship program, and I covered what the aide didn't. Doris sold a ring she never wore anymore. He never forgot that. Years later, after he'd been working steady for a few seasons, he asked us to meet him at the county courthouse. He was 23. The clerk looked over the adoption paperwork and said, "Most folks do this when the kid's a lot younger." Nathan said, "The paperwork's late, the family isn't." Doris cried so hard she had to sit down in the hallway. I told everyone there was dust in my eye. Now, all those years later, Nathan was the one arranging my surgery. By 9 that morning, he'd already called the surgical center, confirmed the payment, and locked in a Thursday date. I told him I could take a cab home afterward. "The clinic won't release you without an adult signing off and staying the first night," he said. "I am an adult," I told him. "Then start acting like one and stop arguing with me." I sent Kimberly one text message. "Surgery is Thursday." Nathan arranged it. It showed delivered. She never wrote back. Thursday morning, Nathan picked me up before the sun was even up. The waiting room was cold and too bright. He sat next to me and read the consent forms out loud because the fine print kept swimming for me, even with my glasses on. When the nurse came to take me back, I handed him my house key. He closed my fingers around it instead. "You gave me a key before I ever believed I belonged anywhere," he said. "I'm not losing you now." The surgery went well. Recovery didn't move in a straight line, though. The first 2 weeks were physical therapy and a walker and Nathan coming by before his shifts to check my incision and refill my pill organizer, color-coded with a marker, so I could tell the mornings from the evenings even half asleep. He never asked what the surgery cost. He never once asked when I planned to pay him back. He just showed up, checked on me, made sure the fridge had food in it, and left. Kimberly finally texted 5 days after the surgery. Hope it went okay. Things have been busy on our end. I stared at that message a long time. Not because it was cruel, because it was so empty. She hadn't asked if I could walk yet. She hadn't asked if I was in pain, or scared, or lonely in that house at night with nobody but the television for company. She was explaining her absence instead of asking about my recovery. I typed out 3 replies and deleted every one. In the end, I sent nothing back. 10 days after that, at my follow-up appointment, the surgeon had me walk the length of the hallway without the walker. My gait's coming back cleaner than I expected at this stage, he told me. Keep up the exercises, and you'll be walking the dog again by summer. I didn't have a dog anymore, not since Doris passed, but I understood what he meant. For the first time in months, I believed I might get my independence back instead of just managing its slow disappearance. That afternoon, Nathan drove me home, and after lunch, I told him I needed to find some paperwork. Insurance records, account statements. Doris always knew where everything was. He said he'd help me look. Doris's writing desk sat in the corner of our bedroom, and I hadn't opened the bottom drawer since the month after her funeral. Not because I couldn't, because I hadn't been ready. Nathan carried the small fireproof lockbox out to the dining table while I hunted for the key taped underneath the drawer. In the exact spot Doris always hid spare keys, in places only she ever remembered. Inside the box were folders in Doris's careful handwriting. Deed, insurance policies, retirement statements, tax returns. Nathan lifted one envelope out. "This one just says Harold," he said. I recognized her handwriting the second I saw it. My chest went tight. "I'll read it later," I told him. He started to hand it to me, then stopped. "Actually," he said quietly, "I think she'd want you reading this now." He walked into the kitchen and gave me the room. I sat there staring at the envelope for a long while before I opened it. "Harold," the letter began, "if you're reading this, then I'm not there anymore to remind you that taking care of yourself isn't selfish. You spent our whole marriage believing love meant carrying every weight without complaint. It doesn't. Sometimes love means letting somebody else carry you when your legs give out. And sometimes love means facing the fact that not everyone you raised will choose to. Don't split what we built out of guilt. Take care of yourself first. After that, leave what's left where you found real loyalty, not where habit tells you it belongs. I love you, always, Doris." I read the last 2 lines 3 times, not because the ink had blurred, but because they hurt. Doris had known me better than anyone alive ever had. She knew I'd keep making excuses for Kimberly long after any sensible man would have stopped. The following Monday, I called Marjorie Kessler, the attorney who'd handled Doris's estate planning for years. Her office sat above a bakery in downtown Harrisburg. When I got there 2 days later, she stood to shake my hand and looked at the cane I still needed for balance. "How's the recovery going?" she asked. "Better every week," I told her. "Good," she said. "Doris was very organized when we set all this up." "She also anticipated something," I said. "What's that?" Marjorie asked. "That one day I'd need permission to put myself first." I told her I'd been thinking about Kimberly. "I figured as much," she said. "I don't want revenge," I told her. Marjorie nodded slowly. "Good," she said. "I don't even want to punish her," I said. "What do you want then?" "I don't ever want to depend on somebody who sees keeping me upright as an inconvenience." She walked me through the whole trust in plain English, no legal jargon. Doris and I had set up a revocable living trust years before, and everything remained available for my care after she passed. I was still fully in control. I could change the beneficiaries. I could name someone else to make medical decisions if I ever couldn't speak for myself. I could remove whoever was managing my finances if I lost capacity. I frowned. "I think Kimberly's still listed for all of that," I said. "She is," Marjorie confirmed. "So if something happened to you, she'd have real authority over your care and your money both." A chill went through me. For the first time since my diagnosis, the thing frightening me most wasn't the hip. It was picturing Todd sitting across from a hospital billing desk, deciding what my treatment was worth to him. Marjorie seemed to read exactly where my mind had gone. "You're not deciding who deserves money today," she said. "You're deciding who you trust with your life." I looked out her window toward the street below. Cars rolling through the intersection, people walking to lunch without a single one of them, knowing my whole world had just quietly split into before and after. I told her, it's finally time I stopped confusing guilt with love. We spent the better part of 2 hours going through the details. The house was worth more than I'd realized after 30 years of the neighborhood coming up. Add the retirement accounts, Doris's small life insurance policy, and the little parcel of land her father had left her, and the estate came to just over $900,000. Not liquid cash I could hand out, but enough to explain exactly why Kimberly had always shown a keen interest whenever paperwork came up at Thanksgiving. The original plan split everything evenly between Kimberly and Nathan. Kimberly was also named as my financial power of attorney, healthcare proxy, and successor trustee, because years ago, back when she worked in banking, it had seemed practical. Now all I could hear was Todd's voice telling me to look into a payment plan. I want your firm handling the trust if I can't, I told Marjorie. That can be arranged, she said. I want Nathan making medical decisions if I lose the ability to speak for myself. We'll need to talk with him first, she said. He'll have to agree to it. He'll say yes, I told her. She gave me a small, knowing smile. I imagine he will. I left Kimberly 30% of the estate, not because she'd earned it, and not because I was afraid of looking harsh. She was still my daughter. I couldn't erase 40 years of raising her over one phone call. But I also couldn't pretend that call was an isolated mistake instead of the surface of something that had been building for years. Nathan would receive 70%, including the house, if I still owned it when I died. A portion would stay set aside for my own long-term care, and a smaller amount would go to a program that helped retired tradesmen with medical costs insurance didn't cover. Kimberly would still inherit money eventually. What she wouldn't inherit was any authority over me while I was alive to have a say in it. When Marjorie finished her notes, she asked if I wanted her to contact both of them. Yes, I said. Do you want everything finalized before that meeting? She asked. I thought about it. Yes, I said. That surprised her slightly. You're certain? She asked. If I bring them in before signing, it turns into a negotiation, I said. And you don't want that? No, I said. I want them to hear it from me. I'm not asking permission. 3 weeks later, we all met in Marjorie's conference room. Kimberly and Todd arrived early. I could see them through the glass wall from the elevator, Todd in a golf polo, Kimberly with a folder open in front of her, tapping a pen against the table like she was rehearsing something. They looked ready for a negotiation. Nathan showed up 4 minutes late in his work boots, still smelling faintly of solder, carrying a gas station coffee. Sorry, he said. We had a service call run long. You're fine, Marjorie told him. He took the chair furthest from the head of the table. No folder. No talking points. Marjorie opened the meeting by explaining that I'd completed several amendments to my estate plan and that before we discussed specifics, she wanted to be clear about one thing. She looked at Kimberly, then Todd. Harold underwent an independent competency evaluation before any of this, she said. These changes are lawful, voluntary, and already executed. This meeting is informational. Todd's expression flattened. Already executed, he repeated. Marjorie began with the roles. Kimberly had been removed as financial power of attorney, removed as healthcare proxy, removed as successor trustee. Kimberly stared at me. You're putting him in charge of everything, she said, nodding at Nathan without looking at him. No, I said. Marjorie's firm handles the money if I can't. Nathan speaks for my care. Why? She asked. Because he showed up when I was scared, I said. And you told me to call the hospital. Nathan turned toward me. Pop, you didn't tell me any of this was happening, he said quietly. I know, I told him. I don't know if I'm qualified for that kind of decision, he said. You're steady, I told him. That's what qualifies you. Todd cleared his throat. And the house, the investments? He asked. There it was. Not my hip, not my health, straight to the numbers. Marjorie explained the new split. 70 to Nathan, 30 to Kimberly, the house going to Nathan as long as it stayed inside the trust. Nathan's face went pale. No, he said immediately. Pop, no, this isn't right. I didn't give you that money for this. I know you didn't, I said. Then don't make it look like I did. I'm not, I told him. Kimberly let out a short, sharp breath. Unbelievable, she said. Todd looked at her. What? I told you to just handle it and let it go, he said. You let me. Because you didn't want to deal with it, she snapped back. Their voices climbed on top of each other. I raised one hand. She may have told you to handle it, Todd, I said, but you were the one who actually said the words to me. He had no answer ready for that. I reached into my jacket and pulled out Nathan's note, the one I'd kept folded in my wallet since the day he left it on my table. The check itself was long gone, deposited weeks earlier. I set the note down in the middle of the table. He worked a full shift the day he wrote this, I said. He has rent, a truck he's saving for, his own life to build. He didn't ask if I could pay him back. Nathan shook his head. Pop, please, he said. I kept going. He didn't know what I had. He didn't know there was any trust to speak of. He just heard that I was scared and showed up at my door. Kimberly's eyes were wet. Todd leaned back in his chair. We didn't have $4,000 sitting around liquid, he said. You had enough money, I told him. What you didn't have was the willingness. That's not fair, he said. You just closed on a boat, I said. We were stretched thin from the closing costs, he said. You were stretched thin between a boat slip and your father-in-law's hip, I said. The room went quiet. You made a choice, and I'm allowed to make one too. Kimberly's jaw tightened. I'm your daughter, she said. Yes, I said. Mom would never have wanted this, she said. I unfolded Doris's letter, which I'd also brought along, my hands steadier than I expected them to be. I read a single line out loud. Leave what's left where you found real loyalty, not where habit tells you it belongs. Kimberly looked away. Nathan wiped his cheek with the back of his hand. Marjorie closed her folder. The amended documents go into formal effect after the standard waiting period, she said. Todd stood up. Delay it, he said. Marjorie stayed seated. That's Harold's call, not mine, she said. Todd looked at me. Harold, he said. No, I told him. Kimberly snapped her folder shut. This is going to tear the family apart, she said. I stood slowly, my new hip holding steady under me in a way it hadn't in over a year. The paperwork didn't tear anything apart, I told her. It just stopped pretending nothing had already come apart on its own. They left without saying goodbye. Through the conference room window, I watched them arguing beside their car in the parking lot. Nathan came to stand near me. As we walked toward the elevator, he offered his arm without me having to ask. I can walk fine on my own now, I told him. I know, he said. I'm still walking next to you anyway. Exactly 3 days later, on a Saturday morning, someone started pounding on my front door hard enough to rattle the storm windows. It had started raining sometime overnight, one of those cold, early spring rains that soaks everything gray. I was at the kitchen table with my second cup of coffee, reading the newspaper without needing to hold it at arm's length for the first time in months, when the knocking started. Not a knock, a series of hard, frantic hits. I pulled the curtain back. Kimberly stood on the porch, soaked through, no umbrella, her mascara running in thin lines down her face. She wasn't dressed the way I was used to seeing her, pressed and put together. Her hair was flat with rain and stuck to her forehead. In one hand she held several folded pages, the amendment documents. She saw me through the glass. Dad, please, she said. I opened the door but didn't step aside right away. Just 1 minute, she said. I let her in. She stood dripping onto the entry rug, looking around like she hadn't been in the house in years, even though it had only been a few months. Nothing had changed. Doris's quilt still hung over the back of the couch. The old mantel clock still ticked in the living room. The family photographs still lined the hallway, and now, for the first time in a long while, I could actually see every face in them clearly. I'll make coffee, I said. Okay, she said quietly. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the same table she'd done her homework at as a girl. For a moment, all I could see was the little girl who used to ask if she could have pancakes for dinner on her birthday. Then I looked down at the papers in her hands, and reality settled back over both of us. She set them carefully on the table. Dad, this has gotten so far out of hand, she said. I stirred my coffee. Has it? I asked. You changed everything over one phone call, she said. I looked at her. One phone call, I said. You know what I mean, she said. No, Kimberly, I said. I honestly don't. She pressed her palms against her eyes. We were under so much pressure that month, she said. The boat cost more than we planned for. There was the slip fee, the insurance, we were stretched so thin. I know, I said. I looked around my kitchen. The refrigerator hummed the way it always did. Which part was the actual bad moment? I asked her quietly. Saying no? Or letting Todd talk over me? Or not calling for 5 days after the surgery? Her shoulders dropped. I texted, she said. You explained your own absence, I told her. You never once asked how I was doing. She swallowed hard. I thought Nathan had it handled, she said. There it is, I said. What? She asked. The sentence, I told her. You figured somebody else would take care of me. I let that sit there and sink in. Older people experience loneliness differently than younger folks think they do. It isn't usually about having nobody physically around. It's about becoming invisible to the people who are supposed to still be looking. Everybody assumes somebody else called. Somebody else checked in. Somebody else made sure you made it up the stairs okay. Eventually, everyone assumes and nobody actually knows. Kimberly stared into her coffee. I didn't think about it that way, she said. I know, I told her. I've replayed that call so many times, she said. So have I told her. I should have driven over that same day, she said. Yes, I said. I should have helped, she said. Yes, I said. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry, Dad. I believe she meant it. But I also knew that apologies come easier once the consequences have already landed. She took a breath. Todd, she started. I raised one finger. No, I said. She stopped. Don't, I told her. He was under just as much pressure, she said. So were you, I said. He got on the phone and pushed, she said. You let him push, I said. It wasn't only my fault, she said. I held her eyes. He spoke the words. I told her. You let the silence sit there afterward. Her shoulders sagged completely. There was nothing left for her to argue. After a while, she asked, Can I ask you something? You just did, I said. Despite everything, she managed a tired half smile. I deserve that, she said. Probably, I told her. She unfolded the estate papers. I keep thinking there has to be some way to fix this, she said. I didn't answer right away. I know I messed up, she said. You did, I told her. I know Nathan deserves more credit than I ever gave him, she said. He does, I said. I know I hurt you, she said. Yes, I said. She looked straight at me. So what do I do? She asked. That question deserved an honest answer. You start by understanding this was never really about the money, I told her. But the paperwork stays exactly where it is. Her face fell. So nothing changes, she said. I shook my head. It stays exactly the way it is, I said. She closed her eyes. I've lost everything, she said. I leaned forward. No, I told her. You still have your career. You still have your kids. You still have your health. You still have 30% of an estate you never did a single thing to earn. You haven't lost everything. Her eyes filled up. You've lost control, I said. That landed harder than anything else I'd said all morning, because it was true. For years, Kimberly had quietly assumed she'd be the one someday handling my money, my medical decisions, my house. Not because we'd ever sat down and discussed it, but because she'd assumed that was simply the natural order of things. Now it wasn't going to be. After a long silence, she asked, if there hadn't been a trust. I stopped her gently. If there'd been no trust at all, I asked, would you still be sitting here this morning? Her lips parted. Nothing came out. The mantel clock ticked loudly in the next room. Somewhere down the street, a garbage truck rumbled past. She lowered her head. I don't know, she said. Thank you, I told her. She looked surprised that I'd thanked her for the honesty. I hate that I don't know, she said. I know, I told her. I want to say yes, she said. But you can't say that honestly, I said. No, she said, I can't. That honesty mattered to me more than any polished apology would have. I reached into the kitchen drawer and pulled out Nathan's original note, which I'd kept there since the day he left it. What's that? She asked. The reason I can walk without a cane today, I told her. She opened it carefully and read it, then read it again slowly. He really paid for the whole thing? She asked quietly. Yes, I said. He never told me, she said. No, I said. Why not? She asked. Because he wasn't doing it to make you look bad, I told her. She sat there a long time. I kept thinking he was trying to replace me, she finally said. I almost smiled at that. Kimberly, nobody can replace a daughter, I told her. She looked hopeful for half a second. But a daughter can still walk away from what being one actually requires, I said. The hope drained out of her face. I don't know how to fix that, she said. You don't fix it in one morning, I told her. I stood up and carried our mugs to the sink. You fix it over 100 ordinary Sundays, I said. She listened. You call because you want to hear my voice, I told her, not because you need something signed. You visit without bringing up paperwork. You show up on the days nothing dramatic is happening. You stop treating your own father like an account you only check when the balance changes. Behind me, I heard her crying quietly. Not loud, not for show. Just enough that I understood something in her had actually cracked open. When I turned back around, she looked older than 39. I don't want the money anymore, she said. I believe you, I told her. You do, she asked. Yes, I said. Then why not change it back? She asked. Because if I did, I said, walking back toward the table, neither one of us would ever know if you kept showing up for me or for what might still eventually be yours. She closed her eyes. I understand, she said. I hope one day you really do, I told her. At the front door, she hesitated with her hand on the frame. Can I come back next weekend? She asked. I thought about it for a second. You don't need my permission to knock, I told her. She nodded and looked past me toward the hallway, toward the photograph of Doris near the stairs. Can you see clearly now? She asked. Better than I have in years, I told her. I think she understood exactly what I meant by that. I watched her walk down the driveway through the rain without calling her back. I didn't feel victorious. There was no satisfaction waiting for me in that kitchen, just a kind of quiet sadness, and underneath it, something else. Relief. For the first time in a long while, I'd stopped begging my own daughter to become the person I'd always hoped she already was. By early summer, I was walking 2 miles most mornings without the cane. And some days I forgot to even think about my hip at all. Nathan still came by most Sundays for dinner, sometimes bringing his girlfriend, sometimes just himself, and a six-pack he never finished on his own. Kimberly called most weeks now, sometimes just to talk about nothing, her kids' softball schedule, a recipe she was trying, nothing about lawyers, nothing about paperwork. Some weeks she didn't call at all, and I let that be all right too, because trust doesn't rebuild itself in a straight line any more than a hip heals in one. One Saturday, Nathan showed up with a truck full of lumber to finally fix the back deck that had been sagging since before Doris passed. I sat on a folding chair and watched him work, handing him tools when he asked, mostly just enjoying being able to see the whole yard clearly again. The maple tree, the bird feeder, the fence line. He straightened up at one point, wiping sweat off his forehead even though the morning was cool. I keep thinking about what you said that day, he told me. Which part? I asked. About showing up on the ordinary days, he said. I've been trying to do that with my own kids someday if I ever have one. I told him he already understood that lesson better than most people twice his age. Growing old takes things from you that nobody warns you about ahead of time. Strength, speed, the easy confidence that your body will simply do what you ask of it. Sometimes it takes people too, or at least the versions of them you'd built up in your head over the years. But the deepest hurt isn't always the physical kind. Sometimes it's realizing that the people you spent your whole life carrying stop noticing the exact moment you start to stumble. I learned something else along the way too. Forgiveness doesn't require handing someone back the same power they already showed you they'd misuse. Boundaries aren't cruelty, no matter how they get described by the person standing on the other side of one. Love can leave a door unlocked without ever handing over the whole house. Nathan's note still sits in Doris's old desk, right next to her letter. One reminds me of the love we built on purpose. The other reminds me that real love, the kind that's actually earned, finds its way back around eventually, even when you've stopped expecting it to. Kimberly and I are still working on what broke that spring. Some weeks we make real progress. Some weeks we just argue about whether she's watering my tomato plants correctly. But when she knocks on my door now, I know it isn't because of what she might someday inherit. She's there because I'm still her father, and for now, that's enough to build the rest back on. If somebody stood by you when things got frightening, their kindness is worth remembering out loud. Tell someone in your life what they mean to you today, while you've still got the chance to say it to their face. Real love doesn't announce itself with a boat or a title on a trust. It shows up at your door with soup and a spare key, ready to hold the flashlight when things get hard. The people who earn our trust aren't always the ones we raise from birth. Sometimes they're the ones who simply never stop showing up. So notice who's really there for you, and let them know it before the ordinary Sundays run out. A small note for you. This story was written and fictionalized by AI for entertainment purposes, while still hoping to carry a genuine, positive lesson to you.